Oh,
We're live.
we'll do it now. Okay, hello everyone. This is a new session of the Nijez Temple where we talk about all things for the Nijez storyline, both the Naiji and the Nijai. The general vibe we go for here is an enlightenment salon. Great conversation of all things interesting and possible. Okay, tonight we'll be addressing the last in the series about the channels as they line up inspirationally for the Nijez. We covered the interpret channel, our source channel. We covered the values-based channel, which is our tandem second channel, and then the logic-based channel is our offside channel, and then tonight we're going to cover the literal perception for the Nijez. That is our polar channel for both the Nijez. Okay, and then as a part of that, we're also going to talk a bit about the Nijai superpolar V to counterpoint how the Naiji has superpolar V, which you talked about before. Then the other major topic for tonight is going to be talking about how peak pathways of all kinds can be pathologized by the environment in general, and then of course how the keening process plays into that, because keening behavior from any power or mojo can be alarming, and things that are alarming often get pathologized, even if they are not. Okay, so introductions, and then we'll do it. All right, I am Naiji Coach.
I'm Naiji Mitchell.
I am Naiji Ben.
I'm Nijai Infiniti.
This is Naiji Glenn.
Bruno, you're up.
I am Nijai Bruno.
Okay.
Nijai Bruno.
Perfect. You got it. All right. Excellent.
Nice.
So let's go ahead and jump into the first topic, and that is Nijez Vez. So I'll just kind of set the scene real briefly here, and then we'll toss it around. One thing is, obviously, that being a polar channel is these powers for both the Nijez are going to be more fetishy. And so lining up fetishes as far as interest is important for that dynamic. In fact, we talk about like riff bonuses for inspirational chemistry. Often things that their modulation channel powers have fetished on is a big part of that. So for example, a music riff Nijez, either one of them will have, certain kinds of literal, Vez channel interests, often to a high degree, but it's going to be around certain topics. Music, for example, the artists, the sounds they make, and how and whatnot. Make sense? So that fetish, that's a big one. I'll throw the big things out, and then we can just jump around. Anything else? Well, obviously that it's going to be done, when done correctly, it will be highly attractive. So as much as, talk about the superpolar powers, as much as for the Naiji, Vi is superpolar, when it's done by Nijai, healthy, it's just stunning. Like that's just, that's like a Nijai peaking all the way from their source down to their polar powers, so that's like, whoa. And so I think for the Nijai, there's also going to be that correlation where if it's done correctly, the V that the Naiji will be able to do, they'll find very impressive. But I think going with fetishy, which is kind of the overarching thing, is there'll probably be strong reactions to the V and Vi fetishes either way. If it's positive, it's negative, or if it's just kind of, I don't know what that is. I think there will be probably strong reactions because you're talking about the polar channel, and then generally because that people are going to like not do things at all, or if they do fetish on them, they're going to really do them, and often will have a particular, very charged up focus on. Often, say for Nijez, an artistic focus, like the way they set those collection of things, the way they put those words together. It may seem like, oh, can we just go in there and edit it? This is art. It doesn't quite work like that. So, you know what I mean? I think both the Nijez will share that quite a bit. Is there any other big ones before we jump around? Probably, I would say there is going to be, as a part of the fetishing, because it is more physical based, more of like an actual exchange of like an art form or making a house, anything like that, keeping good records on things. I think it would be like a more physical exchange of energy, or at least a more practical exchange of energy, which is important. But for the Nijez, actually generally conversational idea kind of bending and warping stuff, that's the most momentum for us. Then after that, talking about how we feel about it, talking about our friends, talking about a better community, that's the next most important thing. Then logistics, how would this work? We don't want to actually fall on its face. That would be embarrassing. We want to actually be sharp and tight. Okay, performance. Performance and record keeping. Those kind of things together. Keeping track of things that have been done and doing things that you wouldn't mind people actually having on your permanent record. So we'll be a bit more extreme there. Okay, that's basically all I have as far as the big stuff. Just kind of stimulate some conversation. Do you guys have any thoughts or experiences at all with any of those things or other principles that haven't been mentioned?
I often find like the way that I really get into my V tends to be very kind of geeked out. You know, it's based on my personal interests, the things I really like, the things that really stimulate my Nye as well. So it's like, you know, it is V, but it's like a V activity that my Nye really likes. I really, you know, I'm interested in. So it's cool.
Actually, if I could hear from trade back and forth, maybe one of the Nijai could talk a bit.
Yeah, and reciprocally, I would almost say that my Vi is kind of related to stuff my Ni likes, because, like, when I'm learning science, like, I'm just thinking about it, there are a lot of definitions, and you've got to really understand them, and it takes buckling down, really understanding what those definitions are, and to me, I mean, I believe that that's Vi, just really getting into each one, understanding it well. I mean, there's also a bit of Z in there as well, you know, understanding how it fits, understanding each individual thing with the understanding that there is a larger story, a larger picture to be told in each subject matter that I'm going to be studying.
Right.
So, I don't know, when I went to school, just this constant focus on really understanding the basics and getting the basics right, then building up beyond that, you know, with the basics, I was able to get the story, and the story was where I got my juice, but it had to start somewhere.
No,
and I enjoyed it.
Thank you for saying that. I got a good visual there in my head, and as a part of that, one of the things you said kind of stood out was like you need to like bear down on it in order to like kind of like get it. I'm curious what if the Niji experience is. I experienced that with V, which is I have an idea in my head, and I can then even talk it out with, you know, my spirits or with my friends with G, and then I can do some pretty good mental experiments or extracting, you know, situational principles that worked in one area, and this new thing I'm thinking about doing, it is similar, so that Xi might give a good chance of working if that principle does apply. But at some point, you just got to put your hands on it. For the V, I think you guys, like you said, you have to bear down like in your head. For me,
right,
it actually ends with like, okay, I think I'm just gonna have to put my hands on this and like work on it and play with it, because then I'll know that's how I know what I'm. Because that energy you gave, whatever I'm missing, because you know we get a lot of stuff being a Jez before we get into the practicals, as far as the energy of it, like theNej channel, the big picture of the patterns, the passion of the values-based channel, and also logic. So we can do a lot of that in our I guess, without asking the word. I guess I'm curious if you guys feel being Nijai. I do feel not in the Vi way, but in a V way. It's like, okay, I had these dreams and these things I want to do and passions and whatnot. I now want to. I have to find out what the world allows for, and I won't know what that allows for unless I put my hands on it. I have to put my hands on it, or that's like a metaphor. It can also be like, you know, speaking out loud or walking it out, or like I'm gonna go out in the street and
like you pacing.
Yeah, or like exactly like when I go out like to meet people and give them invitation cards. Like I'm not gonna touch any of them. That's not the plan. So it's not gonna be like.
But really try it out.
Yeah, exactly. I have to like physically, basically, I have to physically be in the scene. Yeah, I have to physically enact the scenes somewhat to know
like
what
actually instantiate it instead of abstracting.
Yes. But
yes, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
I kind of have a strange task now, because I've always sort of like in media, for example, like as a male, Nijai, in media, you're sort of bombarded throughout life with Naiji themes. You're like, you know, like a good, I'd say more than 60, maybe upwards of 80% of movies with male roles are like, you should be directive, you should probably be a Naiji or something, or maybe a Vi Alpha. But definitely, you know, if you're gonna be Ni, you're gonna kind of have to play this comic role, or you know, you're gonna kind of have to like, you're not gonna like get to make a lot of choices. You're gonna have to go with what is given to you.
Right.
Sort of.
Right.
I think that
And,
is much better off in the music bubble. The music bubble.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, in the acting, I know what you're saying for sure.
Yeah, in acting, in movies, even though I'm primarily a musician, like music focused as a Nijai, like my other is basically like, you know, what she says is like basically like you have to do this kind of music at this kind of rate in this kind of way. You know, that's like her thing. So I don't get a say in that. That's like what she says, and I'm like, well, I have to like work with what you're giving me. But with, you know, movies, I mean, movies are like one of the main ways that I've learned about, you know, the stories behind art and all this stuff. In almost all the movies, even Nijai characters, like if you look at biopics for Nijai characters, like 24-Hour Party People, or almost any Nijai male character will be played by a Naiji or Naizi, or male actor usually.
In the less common instances, just when we have the resources for it, but it's totally true what you're saying, in that even when you'll have a Nijai that's a big enough of a star, like Justin Timberlake or Hugh Jackman, to play the lead, so to speak, in the movie, they tend to make them play like they're not.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, like, they don't let them be the lead while being the lead the way a Nijai would. Like, for example, like all those amazing Nijai music artists, they're like the lead. There's tons of lead singers and band leaders. They're all Nijai, so they're like the leader in that bubble, that adventure. But in film, it doesn't get represented. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but please continue. I just totally true what you're saying.
I don't have a plan with. I'm totally improvising this, so yeah, please jump in anytime. Like, this is usually how I talk and think. Like, I just don't have, you know, But
Awesome.
at the same time, I never thought of it that way. I always thought of it as directive. I don't know, for a lot of reasons. Like, you know, the thing about pop culture we were just saying. You know, my family life, I'm pretty sure my parents, my whole family, I'm pretty sure all 4 grandparents on down is all Nijai, and they're all extremely, yeah, and they're all like really vied up. Like it's like, you know, it's like.
That's an interesting point. I think it's a really good discussion item related to the Jez Vez. Is that phenomenon? It's kind of funny. It's been in my head as like a trend, but I haven't really like articulated until now. Is that Naiji, for example, that are with other Naiji, their V seems to like perpetuate a bit of like overmodulated V on their partner's side, and then that makes the partner do it back, and they kind of just keep making each other more beat up.
Yeah.
That's what happens in my marriage.
So with Nijai, I think it's the same thing. Like the Vi, it kind of like just keeps challenging the other one's Vi back and forth. There's no.
Yep.
You've got to have that inspirational power to give the relief at once. Like I know, I won't derail here, I'll stay with Vez, but I know, for example, with my family, with all Naiji, is that, just G in general, if you see any G Mojo in general, I guess G user, you kind of just keep pushing until you get a certain like feel, and with G to G, it needs to be like agreement or disagreement. It needs to be like, you kind of like pressure it into like whatever form it's going to be. But that doesn't work with Zhai. And if you do it the way Zhai needs it to be done, you'll finally get that ah. Otherwise, have you seen like G repeating itself? It'll repeat rituals over and over in a room or like within the evening, and you're like, why is it doing that? It's because no Zhai gave it the response it needs to know, like, oh, that's been achieved, or that means this. So you kind of just keep doing it over. So anyway, I think there's a lot of that. That's an overt one, but I think all the channels, all the powers, like, if they don't get like that response from the inspirational, they kind of just keep spinning their wheels harder.
Yeah, I mean, there's even with the adaptives. Like, I know you said this about directives, but I think even with adaptives, like
I think this is a phenomenon. Sorry, if I wasn't clear on that. This is a double up. Anytime you double up Mojo.
You were very clear on that. But from your experience with Double Naiji, you said that, you know, like when there's, in another video, not today, in like one of like several months ago. I mean, I've been following you guys' videos for a while. It's fascinating stuff, you know, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I think you said something like when there's two Naiji, there's always like this contest of who is the Naiji, right? But I'm pretty sure that happens anytime there's two of any mojo.
Oh yes.
And it changes also based on powers, like, you know, who is the Ni, who's got the Ni right now, who's got the Jai, who's got the Z and the Vi, and and that's just, I mean, it can work, and there's a lot of, like, the Frozen, the people that compose Frozen, you know, the movie Frozen.
Idina Menzel?
No, she's a singer, but the composers are a double Ni-Jai couple. Roberto Lopez and his wife, and they're both Ni-Jai. You know Frozen, right? Like Let It Go, that
Yes.
that stuff.
Yeah.
They're double Ni-Jai, and they work really well together. But it's probably because they both do music, like, as a team. You know, he composes all the music, and she writes the lyrics, and she sings. And if you look it up, it's great. Like, they work really well together. They like, almost every interview they do with a piano, and like, he plays and she sings, and it's really nice.
Oh, it's
But,
so nice.
On that trend, another element of it is that, which can make it more challenging to explain the benefits of the inspirational relationship, which is the most energetically optimized, is because doubled up pairs, double Vi-Ji, double Vi-Jai, double Vi-Zai, double Ni-Ji, double Ni-Jai, double Ni-Zai, double Ni-Z, all of them tend to dominate. It's a trend. They're career bubbles.
if they work together on the same thing.
Yeah, but in general, I know it's like if the career bubble can be like a projection of the other, it's interesting. Like it is a success. I've seen a lot of fields from literals and interpretives. It crosses all over.
Oh yeah, double Vai-Ji, politicians.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Definitely.
been quite a few of those in the White House. Double
Yeah,
Vai-Ji,
so
double
that's-
Obamas.
Yeah.
Bruno?
Yeah, and so it's a little bit of a mind trip going back through my life, which I've lived way before I thought of. I learned about Naiji and Ni-Jai and all these things. I always just identified with Naiji characters so much because, for one, they're the most they're the most prevalent in pop culture, and even in music, like the music that I tended to like. Especially earlier on when I was younger, it was like very like angsty, like loud, aggressive, like very like high energy. And now I'm realizing that that's really a lot of what my other wants, which is, you know, she just has this like very you know, like it seems like if I play like she's always just like this music, you know, like I'm trying.
No, take your time. This is cool.
Take your time. Take your time.
It's just it's like when I don't listen to classical music much, but when I listen to something like Beethoven or Mozart, especially when I watch those films, and you can see like there's a storm going inside the person's head. It feels like thunderstorms and clouds and just all this like really intense stuff.
Undoubtedly.
Yeah, that's what I've always identified with. Not like the more like Justin Timberlake or like that kind of Ni-Jai, like more like smooth kind of thing. I've always just identified with like rumbling, shaking earth sounds, you know, like that kind of thing. I don't know where that comes from. I mean, it's probably somewhat just inherent.
Well, I think it's controlling from your other, and also
Yeah.
Niges that are into the arts tend to have a noticeably strong connection to their other, to where it can be confusing what's them and what's the other person. Like with me and Nexi, we have conversations a lot, and then we, do stuff, and sometimes it's confusing exactly where my opinions and insights end and my muses begins.
You mentioned that you like that show Vikings a lot, and I watched that whole thing. It's really great. But do you find that Nexi really identifies in that world? Like she feels like really at home and like.
That's a very good question.
Ooh.
I mean, I figured that's why you liked it so much, because like Nexi was like would be like, this is where you should be. Like, why aren't we in some place like this? And
Okay, good question. Ooh, good question. Okay, 3 things on that. Just jump my head. Nijai Grace, some of the conversation. Okay, number 1, Nexi super mega digs Catherine Winnick, the Nijai lead female in there. So, I don't have much other things she does. She's a very strong, badass female in there, and Nexi really likes to see her adventures and where they go. She likes the fact that her and Ragnar are kind of seen as equals in back and forth. They're both leaders. They get screwed over, screw other people over. They win battles, they lose battles. They're players, and then they have this romantic, tension where they, used to be lovers for many years, and then now they're kind of like allies. Sometimes they're not. Anyway, so that dynamic I find appealing, and this is something that is interesting. That Zai can be helpful for in this regard. Is because I know she's dealing with Shailene, sometimes I explain these things to her, and then she then likes it, but before it's explained to her, she doesn't like it as much, like the Vikings, which is that's a principle of how a Naiji and Nijai could interact, where they're both powerful, they're both players, which is actually separate from the Viking landscape, if that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's basically like saying like, the romantic thing is not even the priority there. Like
No.
it's almost like just purely almost political in like not in a cynical Machiavellian way, but like in a purely like mind game, like mentally.
It's actually a combination of the political, and I would just say like them as people, like as protagonists.
Right. I mean, I don't mean political. Like the word political is.
No, but did you know? I actually think
Not
they do touch
particularly.
on both. You weren't wrong, because in Vikings they basically kind of keep track of who the major leaders are and how they're winning or losing in rank, and she's one of them. Her and Ragnar are one of the major players. That part, but then also they do a lot like with character studying him, her, his brother, and then the wizard Loki. Those 4, they kind of study why they do what they do, and I find that quite interesting. And so, particularly, Nexi finds the Lagertha character impressive while still seeming bright and shiny. So she kind of like gives me visions of how would I do it. All right. So the second element is also not just because of the Vikings, but it's there. Is I like the fact that it focuses a lot about the power of vision. Because like Ragnar is a good fighter, but there are others who are better. It's his vision. It's his ability to actually know where the tides of things are going, to take on new technology, to travel across to the places that other Vikings had not gotten to before. So I don't generally agree with the Viking ways of doing a lot of things moralistically, but I do find it fascinating as someone who is doing an unprecedented kind of campaign myself. What's it like when you roll up on someone's shores and no one expected to see Vikings? And next thing you know, you got like English kings talking to this Viking king, and you're like, that's a thing now. Me and Nexi find that fascinating when new worlds meet. Do you know what I mean? That's pretty interesting. And then third,
Absolutely.
related to kind of like where your shy is coming from this one, on the other side is I consistently have a vision of like impressing the Lagertha character, and then either completely dominating the world so that I could make it not so crappy. Because this cutting people open all the time and all that kind of nonsense, that needs to stop. So I either impress her in a way she recognizes while also changing that world, or we leave and we go to a new world and we make it better. But no, I don't consider the way that Viking culture is doing things to be acceptable. I don't enjoy the show for that reason.
I think Ragnar makes it clear that he doesn't either, and it's just where he is, and he sort of has to do that. And so his G code of conduct says, well, if you absolutely must for survival, then I guess you have to. But it's like the opposite of what the Naked and Afraid character that you're talking about, the Christian guy who like gets the thrill of killing things just for kicks.
Right.
But and Ragnar's like completely the opposite. It's like, because this is his absolute last resort, and if he doesn't do this,
He's an unusual Viking, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Kind of like Mask. Sometimes he does things where he's being like merciful, that's a thing that comes up regularly. He'll be merciful, but he'll have to mask it. Like his culture would not actually accept how forward-thinking he is on some things. That with a Christian, his Christian friend, for example. Like Floki was like, "What's happening to you, man? You're not a Viking no more."
And Athelstan was really the only one that he could like connect with on a lot of these ideas. And I thought he was like a pretty cool character too. Who's like he's apparently based on, well, I don't know if he's based on, but he's named after like a real king of England at the time who was like, I don't know if you looked this up. He was like
not this much. Thank you for telling
yeah,
me.
he was able to unify a lot of the separate kingdoms. You know, because I guess England at the time was composed of many smaller warring kingdoms, like they show in the TV show, and they're constantly like doing power plays and picking fights with each other and doing alliances and that kind of thing. And Athelstan was the name of a king who he was very religious, just like the guy in the show, and he was able to unify a lot of these separate kingdoms and create peace. Like I think he was one of he was like the first one to do that successfully, and I don't know. He was like Ragnar, who's also based on a real character. Like he was pretty unique in doing.
I didn't realize that the way they kind of portrayed Athelstan in the making of kind of stuff was that Ragnar was known the most. His brother was known to be historical, but not much on him. Lagertha is historical, but not much known on her. But the priest was sort of conveyed that he was like almost like a what do you call it, composite, a fictional composite.
Yeah, and it sounds. I mean, it really sounds like it. It's like, I mean, he in real life he was a king in England, but he was in the show he's like taken as a hostage. Well, first he's a monk in a monastery, and
But you're saying that this Athelstan king lived at the same era as the Viking show?
Sure, right around that time, I think maybe right before, or maybe right afterwards. But yeah, he was actually a real king, and he was very pious, just like the Athelstan in the show. Like he never married. He managed to marry several of his sisters to other kings in the area, so that forged alliances.
That's what you do.
Yeah.
When you're doing king stuff, I guess.
Yeah, and so he basically played the counterpart to what Ragnar would do in that, like, they both have the same goal, it sounds like, but they like play different sides of the system.
It's just, I actually don't know why they decided to kill the character. I actually thought that he added a unique tension, like a tension between him and Floki, for example. I thought that was a tension that could have gone on for quite some time. In fact,
Yeah, that's too bad.
So I'm wondering, as far as like for dramatic, since of the characters, he's the one that I believe is like a fictional composite. They don't have to be sperm on what he's doing. I'm wondering why dramatically they made the choice to kill him. You know what I mean? Because it seemed like for a lot of the earlier seasons, that was like one of the main tension points throughout. I'm curious how they're going to adjust that. Although I have a theory, is I think the brother, the Psycho, he's married now to a very Christian European woman, right? Princess. That's how the last season ends, and so I think that's going to be an issue, and the fact that I guess he's maybe turning against Ragnar. So, but as far as like the Christian thing being spoken of with the Vikings, maybe his new wife, the battle between his Viking ways and her Christian ways will be where that tension is, let out in the show.
Yeah, I mean that's just one of the many great shows that you guys have been talking about, and I've been following along. So that's awesome. Yeah, getting back to I guess what we were on track with.
We're talking
yeah, like the Vez thing. I'm having. What's that?
We were talking about the Vez Polar Channel. Also, I think a little bit about doubling up and how that makes that hard to be healthy.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking about doubling up in my own personal family life, and explaining how. There's always sort of like this impetus, just like be directive, like don't be adaptive, like don't be like um, don't be wishy-washy. Don't be like you gotta settle down. You gotta study. Like I don't know. This is just how my family has lived for.
Right.
I mean,
It's quite common. You gotta work hard. You gotta be taken seriously. If you're not
like two or three generations, like a few generations ago, we were living in like huts, like in Peru or Brazil. Like, I'm not far removed from that, and so there wasn't a lot of opportunity for like, just let your mind wander and all these things. It was just like sit down, study, get it right, and don't go out. Like don't interact with the world that's gonna like pollute your mind. Just like stay in, get locked in, close the door, stay in.
A lot of Nijai are quite reclusive. As an objective mojo, they actually have very reclusive habits.
Especially when I'm studying for something, when I just want to, I could like hunker down for quite a while just focusing on scholastics at the expense of everything else in my life.
And this combination, like we were saying, like the hunkering down on it, but then also the element of like the world's going to get you.
Yeah.
You're
going to get an F. You're going to get an F. Your life is screwed.
The world will distract you, and you'll be
I
screwed.
think I've seen some Nijai.
That's actually quite interesting. I think I've experienced some like opposite things in certain respects. To what Bruno was talking about there. For me, I've gotten a lot of pressure to actually go out.
Do the opposite.
Yeah,
that's kind of cool. Yeah, we'd rather just stay in our caves, but
exactly. Exactly. The world is not going to come to you. Things are not just going to happen for you. You have to go out there and you have to go and get it. You have to, go and do these things out in the objective world.
Sometimes Nijai doing it.
And then for Nijai, I think because I have family that's Nijai as well, and they tend to spend a lot of time outside. They like to hang out with their friends. They like to go and do things outside, and just stuff that Nijai do. And sometimes they might be dinged and they might be told to stay inside by, my parents or whoever or whatever it is that might be telling them in the world. And it's just kind of interesting the way that whatever it is that you seem to want to do, people sometimes may want to push you to do the opposite. And I think in a way it's like it could be good to do that because it kind of helps to, rein you in a little bit, but it has to be done properly and in the right kind of way, and it has to be understood that that's modulation for you, and that's not necessarily something that's going to be, momentum for you. So you have to always, people don't want to like get you. People don't want to see you like get too carried away with something. So that's why they do that, I guess. But it has to be accounted for that that's not necessarily native to your native way. Yeah.
On that, they can also cross over to where it kind of blurs, where Nijai can be where they don't like to go out or they like going out, and Nijai can be the same way. I think one of the things that they really can help each other with is being a chaperone. Because, for example, like in general, I prefer to stay in my lair lab. But with that said, I know, having been around a lot of adaptives in my life, that there are certain things that they're like interested in doing out in the world, but they're daunted for some reason because going there or talking to those people or whatever, like they find that daunting. My 9G has no problem with that whatsoever. I'm like, oh, really? And that can actually make it easy for me to get out of my lair because I'm like, oh, I'm kind of like doing a favor for a friend, but I don't really consider that very challenging. And then vice versa, like the Nijai, Nexi does me all the time, where like I find like things with tons of details, like databasey kind of stuff and things like that, or just like reams and reams of like forum posts you got to read through and get all the the data drops. I'm like but she finds that fun, and so normally I guess being a Nijai, it's not going to be something to be fun, but I notice like that's fun, and she's like, oh, I don't like you're saying the word you used there, Nbini, hunkering down, like. Nijai can hunker down on certain vibe, and then because they don't have a problem with it, I feel more okay being there. Like I don't feel daunted by it. Like for one thing, I feel very strong mentally when it comes to just like generally understanding concepts, combining them, measuring them in my head, running simulations, and articulating them. And that I feel strong about that. But when it actually gets into like interfacing systemically and touching all the right buttons and doing. I generally try to avoid those things because I'm like, I'm a genius who's gonna go in and I'm gonna miss like 3 slashes on some fucking T, and I'm gonna get like a bad grade. You know, it's like screw that. You know what I mean?
And I think that's where Shailene really helps you out, actually.
Big time. And in general, I think the Vi of all my inspiration, the Nijai, the Jianyan, the Nizai, that way of doing Vi makes it seem neat and fun. It's not scary. It's cool. Anyway, I think I think Almo just had that with their other, but anyway, for the Nijez, I think that you can kind of be a chaperone in that environment. Because in the stuff that, for example, Naiji do with V, we tend to be quite good at it. Like, if we fetish on it, then if that's something that you find nervous doing, I can chaperone you there. I feel strong in that. Just like a neat guy in their Vi, they kind of chaperone you on a conversation or a research expedition that's going to go deep into the weeds, as I like to call it. You guys call it Vi. I'm like, that's deep in the weeds. You know what I mean?
So true.
You know, that brings up a good point, Coach. Which is sort of like if like a Naiji or Nijai sees another Naiji or Nijai that happens to be very skilled in a certain area that's very, I guess you could say, physical, it can kind of turn them off. It can make them feel like, I don't really know if I like this. I don't know if I really am into this. But then that Naiji or Nijai can really act as a really great chaperone to them and help them get over some of those kinds of initial, you know, kind of first impressions that can come to them. Because, you know, for that person, for that Naiji or Nijai that's really good at that kind of a physical thing, it's actually not really that much modulation for them because they've done it a lot and they've become really good at it. And so it's just become very, it's actually, they're getting a lot of good flow with their energy from it. And so it doesn't really impinge on them as much, and they know all the shortcuts. They know all the little tiny little areas where you can get away with, like, oh, you don't really, you know, I see what you're seeing. I know that I know how that's hitting you, but actually there's a way around that, and you can get away with like doing it this way, and it doesn't actually hurt. It doesn't, you know, it's not going to do the same thing like you think it's going to do.
And so not only what you said is totally true. Not only can they do that, where they can make it to where you don't even feel the, you know, energetic being put out, they can convert it. They're like, this has now become cool. There's a lot of activities I've mentioned over the years, you guys seen in vlogs with Nexi. If she wasn't into it, I would say, fuck this. I wouldn't even touch it. But she's into it, now it's cool. As long as she's saying it's cool, it's cool. I mean, that's the only reason it's working, but it happens a lot. On that, I mentioned two things related. Is, for example, Bruno, the amount of details you drop about the history of different artists and what's going on, like that it's staggering, but I actually find it very reassuring that your brain is that powerful. And
it's not. Yeah. I use the internet.
I don't think you realize that. As IG, we're very powerful at anything that our model has. But when it comes to like just jumping around to different things and making loose connections, that's not something that's native to us. So it's funny, that seems easy to you, but I'm like, that's really cool. Because also at a certain point, I start getting a little like nervous of it. Because as it relates to me, I'm doing right now the music timeline. You guys know I did this with the TV timeline. I was like frightened. No way of putting around it. Like I first of all, this happened like many times, but 3 big ones, actually four big ones. One is when I started realizing I could read this phenomenon like this. Next is like, okay, what is the most that other people have done? And I was scared of the number. I was scared of like, what was the ZVi official number of all my competitors? Like but she was like, you should look. Indeed, but I still went out to find what it was, and I was like nervous with the number. But she made hunting down that very specific and unequivocal number like exciting. And before I was kind of like nervous about it. And then after that, she's like, okay, well, even if no one else has done it, do you think you could get over 1,000? I'd never tried that before, but she kind of snuck up on me. She Z-invited me of like, I've added up the different things you've read over here and here. Like, yeah, I think you're somewhere in the hundreds. I don't know. And she's like, add it up. She doesn't love her Z and Vi. Add it up. Add up exactly what it is. I do a lot of things just sort of like on the move. That's the way Naiji do it. She's like, add that up. And I added up. I'm like, she's like, it's close to 1,000. You should go for 1,000. I was like, ugh. But it made a thing, and then I got very excited about doing it. Once I broke that barrier, it broke other ones. Because after that, she kept going, and the big one was like 10,000. Just I thought that was inhuman. I didn't know I could do that. But she's like, give it a go. Because she started keeping these Zevi things like, how many people are in movies? How many people are like all that? And now I'm doing it again with the music timeline. She's like, how many songs are really like strongly in your head? And again, these are numbers that make me nervous. But she knows they'll help me. You know what I mean? The Nijai thing are good at actually knowing the world's Z, it can help you. Because naturally that doesn't come to us. And the Vi is the same thing. I often think like Vi is the thing that's going to keep me out of the door. It's not going to be my genius. And it's not going to be how, passionately I care. And it won't be because of how hardcore I am. It will not be because of how full on I am when I get on the mat. None of those things are going to be an issue for me. Some Z protocol that says I didn't get the right slip and so I don't get to get in, or Vi, like, oh, you only have 3 toothbrushes. So what, we're grappling on a mat? Well, got to have 4 toothbrushes, you only have 3, so, that's how it goes. I have nightmares about that all the time, you know what I mean? It's stupid shit like, no, you gotta be kidding me. But next he's always there like, ding, I got it. Thank you.
Why you use 4 toothbrushes? I have no idea. But yeah, totally.
I don't know what's going on. That was fun.
Yeah.
So
sorry.
Oh no, I just had 2 points that I wanted to make. I'll make them after you.
I didn't have any points. I was gonna start saying words.
Okay. Okay. Okay, sure. So I wrote down some things that are meaningful to me here, and they have a lot to do with like Nai and then V. There's something that I've noticed, I've experienced, which is like Nai has a lot of great powers to it, and I've experienced a lot of them. And infinity and possibility is one of those things where it's like it's really awesome thinking about like the vastness of something, and just keeps going on and on and on and on. And you can just multiply, take infinity, multiply your possibility, and what do you get? You just get more of the same. It keeps going on and on and on. And that's really awesome, and that's really cool, and I really like that. And anytime I get into something, I don't ever want to feel like I'm being, closed in on in any kind of way that makes me feel like this isn't really going to do anything for me. This is not really, this is not really stackable. It doesn't really go on anymore. And that's really awesome. That's really great. But the bad point is the negative aspect of sometimes what that is. Sometimes Nez Alpha or interpreters don't really see this, but it can kind of get a little bit annoying in the sense that you kind of really do want to know what those lines are. Like you mentioned this, Coach. You want to I guess I wish there was infinite amount of possibilities and stuff, but there really is one answer. That's like the Nai of it, right? You want to eventually coalesce into some kind of like a crystallization of what truth is, and this is something that you can hold on to forever. And this is just this is the truth. And there's no wiggle room on that. And you kind of like that. It's kind of very literal in a way, because it's sort of like you can't shift it around, you can't move it around, but it gives this sort of sureness. It gives this sort of
It's not little.
Yeah. What is it? What is it?
Because it's the sureness, it's the implacability of it, but that's actually not literal. It's because you think you're seeing the big picture, that until something rattles you that you may not actually see the big picture you think you're seeing, then it's all go. Do you mean there? You have the upper level thinking right of way, and Naiji, particularly hunters like having the right of way. They like knowing, nope, I'm the submarine commander of the secret code. I get to say. We just like doing that. So that's just our particular way of doing it.
Totally.
And in fact, it's because we see the pattern. We kind of look at everyone's eyes, and we're like, I think the words that are tumbling out of your mouth right now are because of that vacant look I see in your eyes. That's kind of what I think. So until you convince me you actually can see something I haven't seen, then I think you're just talking from a lesser position, in which case that counts as noise.
Totally. Yeah, but I mean, Nez, when it's gone bad, it can end up leading a Nai Alpha, for example, to a lot of like paranoia, and it really feels good to be able to know what the truth is of the matter, so that you don't get too crazy with like weird, superstitious kind of ideas that don't really go anywhere. They're just all in your head, and that's something that I just hate. I hate when that happens. And there's another point to it, which is like the vagueness. Like a lot of Nai Alpha, a lot of Naiji, a lot of interpreters in general, we do really, really like to speak in that very sort of high, upper level kind of like way, which is kind of just more universal in the way that it's sounds, in the way that we talk about concepts and these kinds of things. But if that ends up going off in a weird direction that doesn't really make any sense, then it's sort of like we're talking about just imaginary things that don't really have anything to do with the real world, so to speak, the true world. And that needs to be watched out for. But I mean, sometimes that's how a lot of like fiction gets created. But something in me sort of like recoils that I don't want to create fiction. I want to discover new things that actually do exist. So, that's just two things I wanted to say. Like it just really going from infinity to reality, and then going from vagueness to like obviousness. Like it's completely and utterly obvious and in front of you, to the point where just like it's so simple. It's just sort of like, how did I not even think of that? How did I not even see that? But once you do see it, just sort of like, okay, cool. I see it at least now, and then you can move forward because you have that with you, for the rest of your life, basically.
Sure.
It's in your simulator.
Something you alluded to, Glenn,
sure.
very good, is the idea, really I guess for all the Nez Alpha, and definitely obviously for the Nijez, is you kind of don't want the Vez channel, the reality, the literal details to ruin the ride, to break the dream, to pop the fancy bubble.
Exactly.
Basically, you don't want it to ruin the spell. But what you were saying is totally true. Actually, if you don't go down to a literal stick, like a landing point, then you didn't have a real spell. So, you know what I mean? So
Great point.
you do need to let your Nez powers, your interpretive powers, kind of unfurl at first without that. But at some point, you have to bring it in. Otherwise, you're not sticking a landing, and then the spell doesn't work.
Yeah. I
And
agree.
And I think the same.
It's just like kind of like a ghost spell. It doesn't
Yeah,
actually.
Yeah, it doesn't have the same kind of oomph to it. Just sort of like you created this really imaginary, cool world of Pandora, but it doesn't really exist, right? Or whatever it is. But it's cool. It's awesome. It's amazing. I kind of want to like think about it, like, so how can we make that possible? How do we make it real?
Exactly.
Like I want to see actual real, islands like floating up in the sky and stuff.
Yeah,
It's and then a lot of movies when they don't do it right like that, they oftentimes they just don't even have an answer to. If you ask them like, so how did you like? What was the theory? What was the understanding? And I understand that you have to sort of like let go of reality when you watch movies and stuff like that. I think there's a way
What
that
flushed out is you can kind of feel it. The fantasy has more of a real feel to it. It's true.
exactly like Game of Thrones has much more of like a real feel to it, right? Like you can really understand like, oh, the reason why this happened at this time is because it totally makes sense. It takes like 5 days journey to travel by horse, get from one place to another. So that kind of thing, yeah.
Because like if there's too much of a literal hiccup, it'll take you out of the suspension of disbelief anyway. So
Yeah,
Anthony,
that's when it's done badly, though. Yeah.
if you had something you want to say?
Yeah, what I was going to say is that for Nijai it works the same way in that what we're trying to do is we have all these big picture things in our head, but we also have to make sure everything's kind of backed up. And how do you back it up? You do your research, you do your homework, you check out your VI, and then you go back. And then otherwise it feels like marshmallow fluff to some degree.
Yeah.
It's like a bunch of higher, but if you can kind of pinpoint, in research that happens all the time. You have to cite something. You have to find some sort of prior precedent going on. Otherwise, no one's gonna buy it. So
I think they'll buy it in degrees.
right, that's very true. That's very true. I'm just thinking of the scientific community.
No, exactly what you mean, but not if you want to actually, be one with the tribe, be one with the y'all. So you'll start with like the ideas in your head, your spirits like it, maybe a few friends that talk in that kind of high lingo. Then you get your Jez, your friends are into it, it might help a little small area there. Then Zez is it's practical, you can actually rely on it more like that. And then finally, the details, you're like, this is a thing. This is actually like a magic ability I have that I can call on upon command. You know what I mean? So different rings of the social alchemy story that extend from you will require more of any Mojo's Peak pathway. And that is the goal. You should be able to integrate with the whole tribe. You should be able to have your story go all the way through. You know, there's no reason to have that hang-up. All the different states, statehoods in the world, they have hang-ups. And really, natural law, with the way it made our species-wide social alchemy, we can stack a whole species. But it's only actually if you get to your other, and then the two of you actually then take your story, match up with the other stories that are near you, and those stories flow out to the obvious conclusion, which is the rest of the tribe, which then takes the next logical conclusion, other beings. Other tribes or other beings of tribes, animals or, aliens that are beyond you. But you basically keep going, how can I make my story, productively harmonious? And the only way that works is you actually keep trying to figure out, how do I take my story to the next level? Because the only way to get to your other is to actually do your powers in a way that actually makes them want to, come and engage with you. And then, as Nejez, this is a big thing we'll be doing this campaign, is leading it, but then you can see quickly we're going to be trying to bring in the Genez. We'll need to have our Nejez story as a people very strong and good in order to hook up with them. Otherwise, the fact there's a slight difference in momentum and modulation energy becomes unsupportable. But it's designed to be supported. If Nejez are doing their story well enough, they can definitely support healthy Genez and healthy Nezez.
For sure.
And then those three stories in unison, strong, they can hook up with a bunch of other ones that are radial around that, and then it's the whole thing. But at any point, someone decides they don't want to hero up, then that's the part of the structure, the social alchemy structure, that is shaky and can cause it to collapse. We have about 40 minutes left. Do we want to switch into talking about the pathologizing stuff, or do we have any more we're going to go over here?
I think Bruno had something he wanted to say.
Oh, easy.
Well, I was just gonna start improvising, riffing on the idea that I have a lot of memories that I need to reframe as a Nijai, because all my life way before I had all my life I've had this mission, this sense of destiny of a mission to make Naiji type music was what I thought of it as. Most of the artists that I listened to were Naiji. It's just like I was saying, it's just very intense, ferocious kind of stuff. But and because of that, in my upbringing, growing up in Brazil, it's a pretty intense place. I don't know if anyone's ever been there, but
I've been there, but I'm familiar with the culture.
Yeah, it's a pretty intense place. If you've seen the World Cup, all these things, it's not a relaxed, easy place to live for the most part. But for my other, that was pretty interesting, because it just early on it exposed me to the culture there. It's just it's like a third world country where there's a lot of problems and a lot of difficulty, but because of that, people make an extra effort to be alive and experience life and make it meaningful in some way. So all those things just combine in so many ways to mold me into, in my head, an IG. And I never thought of it, but when you said Nijai and Adimas posted that video of Skrillex, and then I looked in the mirror and I was like, oh, okay, so that makes sense. That's why I've been pretending to be an IG, and it's
It's fascinating.
Yeah, it just feels like, and then I at first, my first reaction when you said that was what the F? That was my reaction. I was like, what the F?
Which, by the way, is why I held off doing it for a while. I was like, oh.
Well, because my Vi had gotten to know and trust all of you guys, and it'd be you know, it would be like, you know, imagine President Obama showing up at your door and saying, aliens are here. Would you like to meet them? Are you, you know, are you free? Are you free this afternoon? We're gonna come back and get you. You wouldn't know what to do. You would be like, is this a trick? Is this a test? You know, or what is it? Like, I know that guy from TV. It looks just like Obama. It sounds just like Obama, and he's knocking at the door and he's saying something that doesn't really compute right now. So I took but I would say within 2 or 3 hours, I would say, I was like, okay, maybe there's no aliens coming, and maybe that wasn't Obama, but some sort of like zombie alien dude pretending to be Obama. I'm gonna go with him anyways, and see where he takes me. You know, just see what happens. Right. And then as soon as they said that, I basically was like, okay, well, actually, I think that's just what a Nijai would do. So I'm just gonna start behaving like a Nijai. And then from then it just snowballed. It was just like,
It's weird though. One thing,
Cool.
you had a profound experience of being on yourself, but I'm sure you've all experienced some emoji reading where you actually are like thinking it's something it's not, and then, because this happened to me with you, Bruno. When I kept being challenged by the data, I kept seeing all these Nijai music art males. I'm like, that's another one that's looking a little like that picture of Bruno.
Yeah, like, I definitely relate to that, Coach. Like, I'll look at like if I misinterpreted like a Naiji as a Nijai, I'll start looking at actual confirmed Naiji and see Nijai in them for some reason. Like, my lens sort of like is telling me that there's something off here, you know, with how I've accounted for that read.
But you have though, like, I think what he was talking about as well, him having on a personal level. But like, I know just on the reading, when I finally do shift, like, oh, he's that. It's like, there's like this. Like the misperception you had, kind of like, I don't know how to say it, but like it melts away.
You know, like a piece of like a drop of dishwater soap into like a bunch of grease. It just like clears it all away, right?
Yeah, the most common instance of that we've talked about, it happens like all the time, is you'll be looking at someone and you're expecting that bubble to see like, you know, a Naiji or a Zaini, but it's not. It's a Naiji, and you're sitting there trying to put like your frame of like Naiji, Zaini, Naiji, and you're like, it doesn't, you know what I mean? And you feel wobbly, and eventually you might even stick them on. I think it's a Naiji because maybe like the directiveness of the Naiji caught you more, and you're like, it's a Naiji then. But still, it's like it doesn't feel right. You know?
Yeah.
It's kind of like a puzzle piece that you muscle into place. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah. And you have a feeling like I have a feeling I'm gonna come back and pull it off, but it's somewhere else. But
I kind of had that with James Grime, I believe, which was a sample on last week's quiz. I initially thought he was an Nijai, but after I wrote that, you know, I hadn't sent in my read yet. You know, I started to feel that there's just no way that could be the case. Like certain images of them, like it just did not fit at all. You know, it fit much more with Zaini. So it's interesting. Like sometimes placing it is like really key to figuring out what the actual right answer is, and kind of mulling on it.
For sure.
But I have something that's kind of important that I want to add, and that is that I think, Coach, that Nexi subconsciously picked up on the fact that I thought I was an IG, I wanted to be an IG, and I thought only an IG will get the highest level that I want to achieve. And so
I was just going to say that, but
yes,
that's so funny you said that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking that. I figured that you were somehow like feeling guilty about this to some level and all this stuff, but obviously you shouldn't, because for one, you're doing this out of your own goodwill and with good intentions, but second, I do think both of us, on purpose, on some level, knew that this is something I had to do and go through, and so it just worked out that way.
Yeah, because he didn't even ask me that question afterwards. He's like, now they're looking at him. How did you ever think he was right? Because I mean, the new Nijai music artist males, the hundreds of them that you introduced me to, Bruno, helped a lot. But I have cracked the case of Nijai dudes like yourself prior to my meeting your case. So I do, you know what I mean? So it is interesting, and I do think I kind of somehow sense like it's not going to go over well. That's something I have to really watch out for. My sensitivity that makes me really good at emoji reading, I have to watch out for people's wishes and wants. Another one I have to watch out for big time is trying to make happy endings.
Inspirationals.
Inspirationals. Those are two. So what people want to be, I have to really tune. That's hard to tune out sometimes. And then also like happy endings. I want to be happy.
Or like or the more simple kind of tidy ending.
Yeah.
Usually, sometimes it's more easier on the head to think, oh, that's just an inspirational match, and that's done, that's good, let's move on. To sort of like have to accept the fact that this relationship is not inspirational, for example, that kind of leaves you with this feeling with like all these questions that you don't really want to ask yourself because it can lead into a whole bunch of other stuff, which kind of feels imperfect. You don't want to see any kind of imperfection. You kind of like want to see everything kind of like nice and tidy.
It's
And that's
sure.
what I look at.
No, that's a very good point.
Or if it's gonna mess up like a riff combo that you've got going, like recently
Right.
how you repositioned Chaka Khan, Dolly Parton, and
Yes.
Nicki Minaj.
Gosh, correct.
Implications.
When you think of it, it's just they're like three twins. Like they're just like
Right.
three of the same ones. Like it's like what the heck? But and then I saw your video blog about it. You were like one of them was in a separate category and the other two were over here, and you were like you couldn't put it together. And probably moving them around was difficult because of that, because you're like they have to sort of subconsciously you feel like they have to be locked in.
It's a very good point. Just so yeah, for sure. When there's packages like that, yeah, when you know that there's like, oh, if Dolly Parton's a B-shy, that means that you start panicking, paranoid. You're like, how many riffs of Dolly Parton are there? Ah!
Right.
Luckily, Dolly Parton is too, but you're like, oh man, because you particularly for interpretatives, I use fifth gear like how it hits me. Like Mojo gives off signals the same way there's weather at sea, and I can kind of read that weather. The other is fourth gear ripping. I can get the other stuff, but those are two that I use most consistently. Which is why, when you start doubting your fourth gear, for example, it's like, oh gosh, because it's all connected. That's because the cool about fourth gear is it's all connected. The bad thing is that there's a problem, you're like, it's all connected.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
It's like one.
And so with that said, Coach, I'm gonna have to. There's no way around it. Like I'm gonna have to tell you that I'm seeing quite a few male Naiji that you classified as male Naiji.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like putting myself in their shoes, and I'm like, yeah, that fits. And so I think that there's going to be quite a few male Naiji that we're going to have to move over. Maybe a few Nishai, maybe a few females as well. But I think a few.
I'm sorry, you're talking about team members or people?
No, not team members, but a few pop culture. Like a few that come to mind. If you want me to just tell you a few right now.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd love to hear.
I have a list here.
I always like to do read reviews.
Oh, dude, this is really cool.
Yeah, I'm gonna put them on the thread, but I just wanted to give you a heads up and like see sort of your get a feel for what you thought. Like the first one was Daniel Radcliffe that I already posted. Like I feel like he's actually like a similar riff to me. Like
Could be.
he's much more like his voice is more trained. Like his voice is he's like a theater actor and all this stuff. And I have a very kind of bad throat, so I have to shout to be heard. And maybe
I'll take a look at him. He hasn't tickled me recently, but you mentioning it will make
That's a worthwhile tickle. I see where you're going with that.
So yeah, go ahead, tell me some more of them, and you put all of them up on the celebrity the review request, and I'll make sure.
I will. Let's see. Christopher Walken reminds me a lot of that country singer Mickey something that was in Star Blues Quiz.
Mickey Gilly.
Mickey Gilly. Christopher Walken riffed me of him, and so I put that guy as a Naiji in the quiz because of Christopher Walken. But then you class that guy as a Nijai. And then today or recently I took a look at Christopher Walken, and I started and just some of the pictures that I see of him.
Now, one thing with Christopher Walken to note is that he sort of masks a lot of times his more predatory energy with a kind of like almost humorous way he does his cadence of words, and also has I think a brightness in his eyes is that he does have a good amount of V going on there, but I'll take a look at it to make sure that's what I'm seeing. Because he does have a brightness to the eyes that I would like to take a look at again.
Yeah, these are all everybody that I'm going to name and post. It's not something I spent a lot of time looking at, and I only looked at pictures, and that's just because I'm never going to be really as good as you are at this. So why would I bother? I'm just going to toss them out to you for you to understand that these are just like Nijai hunches.
Well, Bruno, in the past I actually did that for Coach quite a bit. When there were questionable things, I actually brought it to Coach. That's really cool that you're doing that, actually.
Yeah, I think it'll help. I think it'll help everybody and sort of like get a better grip on like what it is that the Mojo phenomenon really is.
I don't think that there's any other similar biases. Like I don't think that there's like Naizi that you put in the Naiji category. I don't think there's anything systematically like that.
Right.
But I think a lot of the more interesting actors and musicians are actually Nijai males, and just for natural reasons that I completely understand. Also being a Nijai male, wanting to identify with Naiji males. You just sort of want to feel like, hey, that could be like similar to me,
right?
Because that like somebody like Christopher Walken's like is really cool and just like really like a brilliant actor and all this stuff. So I can another one is Benedict Cumberbatch.
Interesting.
Because he plays.
Walken and Benedict Cumberbatch. We can take a look at that now since we have. You know what? Because this is an interesting conversation. We can do the pathology stuff next time. Let's go pursue this.
Yeah. That's what I was wondering. This is going full blown.
Yeah, let's go and pull up Chris Walken. We'll start there.
Like especially pictures where he's moving his hands. Like I feel a lot of the same kind of movements. Like
does it make sense to load videos? Maybe we should load videos like we do Sunday nights.
That's what I'm saying. Can someone pull up
Cool.
Christopher Walken?
So Christopher Walken, he riffed a view of who, by the way, Bruno?
Mickey Gilley, the country music he's a musician and restaurant bar owner. He was in Star Globe's Quiz a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, in Texas. Yeah. Bar was in the movie Urban Cowboy with John Travolta.
Interesting.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. That's like the only thing I know about Gilley.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see what you're saying.
Is someone pulling up a video?
Oh,
Could I get the link, by the way, too?
Who's doing that? Mitchell, are you pulling a video up of Christopher Walken?
Oh, I didn't have a video. Sorry.
I don't think we assigned someone to do it.
And then we should also do Radcliffe now that we're.
Yeah, we'll do whatever we can do here, and then anything else you can just put in the form, and I'll get to take a look at when I can.
Do you want me to get a video?
Ooh, this is fun.
Christopher Walken. Unless someone's already doing it.
No, could you go into that, Mitchell? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll need the link, by the way.
Just any old interview?
Yeah, anything you should do, as long as it's clear.
Sorry, guys. How do I use this? I'm seeing a YouTube playlist, and I'm seeing the videos, but
on the left panel, there are a whole bunch of. Do you see a whole bunch of icons on the left vertically?
Yep.
So YouTube is the red one with a right arrow.
That's the best one.
Okay. Got it. Oh, that's cool. Now I see you in the full screen.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No problem.
All right. This one's a little older, but it's fine. Looks pretty enough. We'll try it.
And I have a little chat window here. Oh, this is cool.
Actually, it's something a little more modern, less grainy.
Sure. Have you even seen it yet?
I could see David Letterman in the.
Yeah, I see Letterman.
I can see the resolution. It looks a little grainy.
Yeah.
All right then. Okay. Try this one.
parts too.
So I don't have to press play, right? You guys are in control of the
Yeah,
play.
Right. That's
They
right.
do.
Yeah, it's one
watch.
unified thing.
Yes, but you can. I believe anyone can they press pause and click around it? Because I think
Anyone can
Yes.
pause and play it, yeah, but it will affect everyone.
Gotcha.
Okay.
I'm from a family of being in show business, and so I just started as a kid, but I did.
Okay, that was a sneer that seemed G. The way
But
he
see,
Yeah.
rolled
but
his
see the thing
hand.
is, I can actually do a sneer on this side like this,
Right, it didn't look
which
like
is
what
Z.
he is doing. Do you guys make it help him out? There's a speed to which the snarling kind of flares up. I'll play it back again.
Yeah, it was on the right-hand side, I think, right?
It
It looked a little bit.
It's on our right, his left. He kind of like tossed his hand when he made a point. He goes, and this little quick like snap snare comes up. Snap.
Usually those are like social dynamic cues, I think, when G, because I think it more on the left side of the face.
The main thing I was focusing on there is the way that it was an emotional push in time with his speaking. He did three things simultaneously. He made a emphasis on the point vocally. He rolled a sneer across his mouth, and he rolled his hand in time. So all three were done in cadence of the speak. So watch here. He kind of goes like, he's looking at his head, he goes, ba ba. And when he does, his hand, his flare of the mouth, and the sort of punctuation of the words all happen at the same time.
Yes, and
It looks like he's probably going to do it more than once, so watch that.
started as a kid, but I did.
There's the first
You
one.
know,
That was all together.
things and musicals. I studied dancing. I never studied acting.
Hey, so now that I'm looking at Mickey Gilley again, like I see that there's not really any correlation there. I mean, it's not saying anything about whether he is or isn't an Nijai, Christopher
Right.
Walken, but I'm seeing, yeah, that I was mistaken about that. What you were saying about the snarl, my microphone was on mute a second ago, and I was trying to say this. So
Sure.
sorry. But yeah, the snarl thing is also something that confused me a lot because I actually, like on the right side, and I don't know, maybe this is because Jai is unaware and I don't have control over it, but I have like a lot of control on my left side. Like I can do this, like I can, I can do it like a pretty serious sneer here on this side, and I've always been able to do that.
On that, I don't think anyone's sneer that way is even, because actually in mine, I can actually hike my right side up more. This is easier to hike up. So I'm not actually talking about which side he hiked up on. What I'm referring to is he did this thing where he goes, boom. And when he did that, he gave a little cheek action, flared up his lips, made the point, he timed it like in a cadence, and his gesture also flipped along with it. So like, so, ba-ba, ba-ba. That kind of like an eyebrow pop in time with the talking to kind of like emotionally spin it or sell it or whatever you call it.
I can definitely see Christopher Walken. Like I think this is one of my weaker revisions of the three that we brought up tonight.
Sure.
Radcliffe.
Yeah, Radcliffe seems stronger.
Radcliffe, just he's tricky. Radcliffe has always reminded me a bit of Elijah Wood, so that would be
Exactly.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's why I'm wondering.
And Cumberbatch maybe 50-50, but and Christopher Walken, I don't know. He's definitely the weakest one of the revisions.
I've seen Walken so far. I think that little bit there. I was still kind of seeing the wizardly thing going on there. But I'm always open to take another look at things again.
Whenever like most of my suggestions are based only on the eyes, like
Gotcha.
like how I feel about the. Can I identify with the the way that the eyes are set, and his eyes I think may just be a little more like V'd up and just charged up.
Who's this?
He also kind of reminds me a little bit of the one that's Harry Met Sally.
Billy
Yeah,
Crystal?
Yeah, I think maybe because I think when Coach updated him, it was something that maybe we were still trying to get used to after a certain point. So I feel like maybe for me personally, Christopher Walken may be attached to one of those riffs, and so getting it back onto the proper position is still something that you need to sort of like get inside your head and do. So it might take a little bit of a while, perhaps.
What is Billy Crystal?
Nijai.
Billy Crystal he's actually a Nike.
No, Nijai. That's my
sense.
Billy Crystal was a tricky one. On that is that I changed him to Nijai a while back, and that was a correct thing to do. What happened a little while ago, I try to keep these things as underneath the surface as I can, is I deal with panic attacks on a regular basis. And now that I'm going out in the field the next couple of weeks, it's been on me. And so what happened is basically my doubt demons just jumped me, and I freaked out. And like 100 reads that I had turned over recently, I'm like, no, they were wrong, and I just wigged out. I believe what I actually did on that, Glenn, I think there was like 120 of them. I ended up doing, I think, the smart thing. I just quarantined them. So technically, Billy Crystal, as of latest public announcement, was listed as just on hold. But actually, funny you mention that is that today I actually went back and looked at Billy Crystal like, no, he's Nijai. He was 125 of those 120 that I put back. So Billy Crystal I currently have as Nijai.
Oh, so you reassessed him ever since the Nijai move?
I know, well, after the move to Nijai for Billy Crystal, which I believe to be correct, I wouldn't say I revisited it. I would say I had a panic attack.
Current panic attack.
Yeah, I wigged out what happened, and when I did, I was like, no, Billy Crystal, I basically tried to put back like about 100 reads to an old position because I just got freaked the fuck out.
I'm not surprised about Billy Crystal Nijai.
But now that I went back, I'm feeling better. I'm still dealing with these panic attacks, and I'm sure I will until I at least get out in the field and get my feet under me. But I feel stronger than I was then, and that's what I decided to do. I decided just to put them on hold until I had a good day. And so I'm feeling a little bit better today, and so when I looked in there in a lens that was stronger than when I panicked, Billy Crystal looks like a Nijai to me.
You know, in the days when he was considered a Naiji, I actually thought to myself, maybe he's a Naizi instead of a Naiji.
Yeah, because he does have a Nijai.
Yeah, but it turns out Nijai, I mean, I guess I was seeing the Z anyway, and Nijai makes sense.
So with that said, I feel pretty good now, so I'm cool taking a look at Daniel Radcliffe and Benedict Cumberbatch. But as always, caveat is that if I ever can't get a read, sometimes I'm just tired or I'm not having a great confidence day or just a hard sample, is that I'll just take more time on it and I'll work on it after the session.
As you should.
But Christopher Walken, he seemed like I saw Naiji, and I feel strong enough to go ahead and take a look at these other two.
It's an interesting coincidence that the day that you changed Billy Crystal back to being a Nijai is the same day that I asked about and it's interesting how that works. I think we have like a mind meld that we're not even completely aware of, like the entire team.
And also Billy Crystal is a big star, and for me, he really excels at Nijai's humor to the point where it's tricky to tell which one he is just on that. And then also, I have always really admired Billy Crystal. For example, when Harry Met Sally, I loved that movie, and I really wanted him to be a Naiji and her a Nijai, but that's actually not the way of it. So several, there's another one he was in with Deborah Winger that I also really like, where he's like a baseball analyst or something, and I really liked his comedies there, and he got paired with Nijai ladies a lot. So anyway, I really quite cared. So that was something also I had to deal with. But I think Billy Crystal is for a lot of people, I think he's easy to identify with, and so what he is, I think, kind of matters. Some samples think matter more as far as like trying to figure out the overall patterns we're seeing. For me, anyway, Billy Crystal, as far as distinguishing Naiji and Nijai, is a rather pivotal one. I always mention George R. Martin, like.
That was the big...
I was on the floor, like someone punched me in the gut.
That was me.
Oh,
I can tell, like,
is not a Naiji author.
Two things.
And that was a double, because as soon as I figured out he was a Nijai, I was like, on the whole riff thing you're talking about, Bruno, I was like, that means almost certainly that Tolkien's Nijai too. And I was like, that was a mean one too, fun. Boom, boom. Not mean. That's awesome that you Nijai have it. But you can understand it's a Nijai. I'm like, oh.
Yeah. And then I think
They're
Guillermo
awesome.
del Toro also.
So when I think of When Harry Met Sally, I kind of actually feel like it's a double Nijai plot. Like those two are kind of acting very much as friends. There's like I don't know, like a very soft romantic type. Well, not really romantic, just great friends. Two great friends hanging out and talking.
Romantic comedy kind of thing, right?
Romantic comedy, yeah, exactly. And then when it comes to Billy Crystal, I also riff him to Nijai Gabe Kaplan from Welcome Back, Kotter. Like
Oh,
sort
yeah.
of a
Oh,
Brooklyn thing.
For sure.
Yeah, strong Brooklyn element.
Interesting enough, they actually paired.
I'm not surprised.
I haven't seen it yet, but they paired him with another Nijai comedian for the show called The Comedians. I hear it's good. It's getting good reviews, I think.
It's currently out?
I believe so. I think it's just had its first season.
Oh, nice.
So anyway, can someone load up Daniel Radcliffe? Mitchell, please. Sure. Thank you.
We actually went in to try to do Benedict Cumberbatch, and now we're doing.
Oh,
Doesn't matter.
I think Daniel Radcliffe is the most challenging, so I thought you could have kind of grabbed first. He's the one I think seen. He kind of does. It's always reminded me of Elijah Wood, so I would like to take a look at him.
Yeah, that's totally true.
All right. Yes.
I'm looking at pictures here, and I do see similarities in the eyes, but questioning what that is.
So here, try this interview.
I think it does. It would be nice because it would fit with like that one character that he acted with in the Harry Potter series, Hermione, because I think she's an Naiji, and if one of them is an Naiji, the other one's an evil.
Right now, though, we should just look at the data here.
And I was just thinking, like,
Sure. But I'm just saying that might be something that might be influencing.
It is, and British accent is a hard accent. It's very calm. Sometimes you can do it. Sometimes.
Oh, did we want to put the link in the player?
I'm riffing him a little with Phil Collins. Just in the way, I don't know. I'm reminded of Phil Collins of early Genesis, but that's a whole other story.
He's channeling more.
Was that real? Is that
Oh my
The way he
God.
laughed right then reminded me a little bit of Ben. We get excited about something.
Yes, very much so.
Did we want to put the link in the player so we could all be on the same page as to what we were looking at, or
Sure. Mitchell, do you have a link for that?
A link in where?
putting it in the actual YouTube player so we could all be on the
It's-
same
We're watching it right now.
I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it on the player.
I'm seeing a lot of Phil
I think Ben, you're
Collins right
must
now.
having technical issues.
It's still on
You guys
Kristen
aren't seeing
Walken
it?
for me.
Yeah, so that's just a tech issue.
Oh.
Okay, whatever. I'll just look at the link. That's fine.
No, can you? Okay.
Yeah, I put the link up.
There. Did you guys hear that? But
It is very Ben-like.
where he's like talking a point, it's a good point. He's actually getting excited about the point while he's saying it.
Cockney, which is perfectly acceptable.
And for your benefit, it was like 25 seconds.
Was that real? Is that
Yeah, there's an interesting laugh. It's kind of a bit like cussive in a way.
I'm seeing a lot of Phil Collins.
I
keep saying that.
Sound just instinctively.
The hands have
Can you do it in American
not much viscosity.
No, I don't even want to do a southern. No, because I might want to play it. Something. No,
The laugh is also a bit percussive.
I'll be a Cockney man on trial, and you're a lawyer. You're very.
I think I'm seeing twitchy, not bobble.
No, I didn't get it. I'm fine.
In the seat, it looks more like twitchy.
Normally we drive when you have to start the road.
Yes, twitchy, sure.
You can concentrate so hot in here. That's not bad. I know. Well, after you do it, you go like this. I know. That's your method.
And another maneuver he did, I think is kind of classic Naiji. Usually the Naiji and the Vaiji doing this. He kind of laughed and he gave a lot of energy to Fallon. And then as he did, you can see him actually reading Fallon over it. He's like, and he was like, you can do a little bit here. He's quite twitchy. I didn't realize he was twitchy. in his acting roles, he kind of channels it into more of like a affable, awkward. But he's rather twitchy here. In fact, I mean, I'm not saying he is, because now you get this a lot. He looks a little tweaked. You know what I'm saying?
He looks a little bit what?
Tweaked.
How do you define that? I don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
On something.
Okay.
Not in a way that would make you more chill.
Okay, the other
Yeah.
way. Got
The
it.
other way.
Like tweaked, like messed with.
Yeah, so I don't know on something.
Yeah, like there's a little bit of
Because he looks twitchy. He looks twitchy. He's like, I'm just saying this. You'll see some of those mannerisms in someone waiting in a meth clinic to get their dosage. I'm just saying.
That's just Najee nervous
I'm
energy.
in no
We have
way
all this.
saying that about Daniel Radcliffe. I'm just saying lots of Najee, particularly a lot of HSP, they twitch in the chair.
Exactly. It's all the adrenaline that's going through our body. It's like it is a drug, really. We're reacting to it.
yeah. Nye Alpha have like a twitchy kind of like cocaine addict kind of thing going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that would
Yeah, but a lot of can you guys hear me?
Yes.
yeah?
Sorry. Okay. I think a lot of Nijai do too, right? Like Russell Brand, like he's
yes.
just like he's like
Sure.
Russell Brand, yeah.
For sure. First of all, Nijai in general tend to bobble a lot, but the bobbleness, it tends to have a different energy to it. It's subtle, but in general, this is a very broad statement, but it's there, is that both of the Nijais are very sensitive people that can get into very heightened emotional states easily, and also, to a degree, other people really can't do or have a hard time getting to those places. Because of that, there is a noticeable trend of, for example, suicide in Nijai. And there is a noticeable trend in Naiji with homicide. These are just facts. So there's something about the way they twitch. When Nijai start getting twitchy, it has more of this manic bobble thing that makes me feel like a bird getting very fluttery. And I'm worried that they're going to, I don't know, get wild or freak out like that, but more like
I
in
see.
an adaptive way.
Lose control.
Yeah, lose control. With Naiji, and he has it right here, when they start getting twitchy, you get a little nervous they're going to do something.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like there's something with the way they rub their legs, they rub the chair. It gets like this, like something's getting amped up to do something, and it makes you nervous. I kind of get that from him. It's the way he's rubbing and everything. Because that's the thing too, is both the Nijai also do a lot of hand wringing, but there's a difference. It's very subtle. Hand wringing versus this thing that the Naiji do. They're like, it's more like rubbing, clamping.
It's softer. It's softer for the new guy.
Yeah.
I don't know. You guys, I mean, this is going way too fast for me. Like I've never like followed the video while you guys are describing it. I've only ever like looked at you guys talking about it while the video plays. So it's really fast, and like the video starts and stops. So I'm having trouble following it.
Oh, okay.
But that's not to say that you guys should stop for my benefit, because I'm just still getting used to all this. But like I said, I don't really have any cues that I can point to or anything like that to say like this guy probably acts like a Nijai or a Niji or whatever. But the only thing
it's a gestalt. It's a big picture thing.
yeah, exactly. The only thing I'm going on actually is the big picture thing. Just like his body style, like how he's like short and stocky, like that's basically how I am. Like how he moves, I feel like not too different from that.
Okay, on that, he's short, but I would not say he's overly stocky. And an area that I would note this on is his fingers are actually a bit lean, as is his wrist joint. And that's, you'll notice that with Naiji in general, and Subjectus in general, they tend to have more of a narrow tapering on the wrist area and other of the major joints. Even if they have like muscles on them, you'll notice they taper more. Whereas the Nijai, for example, actually, and the pilots as well, pilots and gatherers, even if they're lean, there tends to be more of a sturdiness in the joint area. Even though the gatherers have less tensioning, there's more of a sturdiness in their joints. His look rather fine to me. I'm curious, I see that he's short, and he is, but he seems also rather slight.
I mean, yeah, I'm not particularly Saki either. So to me, he looks like he's Saki, but
Okay.
um,
And by the
Yeah,
way, one thing that might help a lot too is that when Infinity first came in, is that he's experiencing something that you are now, which is our team has kind of been doing this for a while, so we have a natural rhythm. We kind of move at a pace. We can stop and hone on anything that you'd like to.
no, it's like I said, I don't have any particular cues that I'm honing in besides the eyes and the overall vibe. You said that he reminds you of Elijah Wood, who I thought was a Nijai.
Yes, I believe Elijah Wood is a Nijai.
Ironically, way back when it was just Podlayer Central and me going through some preparation for all of this, I actually brought up Elijah Wood way back when he was still considered a Naiji.
Yeah, I saw that video. Actually.
Very similar reason. Oh, really? Oh, cool.
And you guys, well, I don't know if it's the one you're talking about, but I saw a video where you coached did a breakdown of Dominic.
Yeah.
The Nijai. What's that?
Dominic Monaghan.
Yeah, Dominic Monaghan and Elijah Wood, and there was some video game conference, and you know, it seemed pretty clear that I mean, you know, you described Elijah Wood as an IG, and I was pretty convinced. I was like, yeah, he's bearing down on the podium, and he's got that heavy like hunch forward, and Dominic Monaghan is like light on his feet and staying in the background. So I was like, yeah, I'm sold on that, sure. So you know, I'm just like, I'm just, you know, I just want to make sure that that's not what's happening here, which is like a very, you know, a very Z and Vi heavy, like Elijah Wood has like great Z and Vi game,
right?
But it's not like that kind of like pinched, strained type that you often see, like like you were saying with music, for example, like country music is one where there's a lot of Nijai males,
right?
And I'm gonna theorize also that there's a lot of rap artists that are Nijai males that.
I know there's I know Timbaland and Pitbull. There's quite a few heavy hitters in there.
Yeah, and I think actually maybe even a few more. Notorious B.I.G. is one of the ones that I put on my revision list just because of the eyes. He's got this kind of like sleepy, droopy kind of.
Interesting.
I looked at and there's several well, there's a few that just like hit me immediately. Many of them are probably wrong, but the Notorious B.I.G. is just one that like his mouth just like looks really hangdog.
Right.
And,
yeah, I can see what you're saying there.
And the eyes as well. And so and I think that you know it's because music allows these Nijai to like do a lot of like assertiveness kind of Z-Vi stuff, just like movies in a way that's not it's not as easy to do without the rules of the game being creative.
Also, for one thing, the music artists have oftentimes the greatest control. To get the kind of control a lot of music artists have, you'd have to be like the director and the cinematographer and the actor, actress, where the music artist, if you have a good sound and a good people work with you, you can just make a good thing. If you can, then you can choose to star in it. It's a lot more control that way.
It's a much older. I mean, it's as far as art forms. I mean, it's older than printing. Older than movies for sure. You know, so there's a lot more like tradition and a lot more. There's been a lot more time for Nijai to create a Vi path through that.
Sure. Also, like in the acting is that like a lot of things when you try to figure out the demographics, you have to figure out the institutions that do the selecting of the HR. So in the movies, you know, you have these companies that finance everything, and movies is a big financial deal. Where music has always been, and especially nowadays, but even way back in the day, is you can just make really good music with not much money. It's a lot harder to stage like a stage production or a film production, where music, if you got some of the voice, you got a good beat, and you can capture it, you're good to go. So
we're making
the arts has more power that way.
We're making a movie now, but this aside.
Say again.
We're making a movie right now, but aside from this current experience that we're having,
right?
It's generally been difficult to make your own kind of movies. Like, well, I mean, 10 years ago we wouldn't have been able to even do what we're doing right now. But yeah. So yeah, I mean, you can see how it progresses, and it just takes time.
But even then, like there are examples that like in, I guess you can have less people, but often in sort of like theater, for example, classically you tend to have like 6 to 8 people to give energy. So often in the acting there are more other people to get that energy from, where with music you can actually have that often with just 2 musicians and a singer. You can even just have with just a singer or just a musician. So the amount of power artistically that each member of a troupe has is generally greater in a music band, for example, a music production team, than compared to a movie or anything else, where there's just a lot more roles, so no one tends to have as much single power that way. Unless they just happen to be a producer, director, yada yada, they're like going to fill all these roles. But otherwise, it doesn't naturally do that.
Yeah, so I think the extension of what you're saying then is basically that anytime you're going to see a Nijai male in like a top, like especially like Radcliffe or Elijah Wood, or like worldwide massive franchises, you're going to see extremely good masquerading as Naiji, basically.
A lot of times, yeah.
And so it's going to be extra difficult for you, to just discern that, or with somebody like Notorious B.I.G.
In the case of Lord of the Rings, that's one of the rare examples where Tolkien famously actually made protagonists that were not in the classic mold. You know what I mean? And so
Yes.
the more humanity and the vulnerability of the Frodo and Bilbo characters lend itself, I think, to being cast as an Nijai. I'm really glad they did that. But I agree, Bruno. Most of the time, they're going to have to mask as something other than they are in order to get those plum roles, quote unquote.
Coach, what Mojo was the Sam character?
Who? I'm sorry.
Sam.
G9?
Yeah, he's a G9. He's like the guy who played Rudy, right? The football movie, yeah.
I believe 9. I believe the other 3, I believe, are Nijai.
Got it.
But I just wanted to say, just on Notorious B.I.G., I actually thought of him as an IZ at one point. I actually initially thought before he was like publicly told, mentioned to be officially being read as by Coach as a Naiji. I thought I was seeing Naizi because he seems to have like those really heavy sheets. But that might be. Then I started thinking, that might be a lot of Zai. So I'm not sure.
I thought the same thing too. Because I just was like, well, there's no way he's a Nijai because I'm not a Nijai, so-and-so's not a Nijai, so-and-so's not a Nijai, and so, but...
That's the reason I'm so glad, for your just general personal development, but also for Mojo reading. You're going to be able to constellate everything so much better now.
Oh my God, yes.
Because we talk, you always use yourself as like a kind of like a reflective surface on all the Mojo reads you do. It's just natural.
But Glenn, you're definitely right. I saw the hangdog mouth. I saw that immediately, and I was surprised when I looked him up and it said Naiji. I was like, I could have sworn he would be a Naizi because of that mouth. But actually, in looking, I the eyes are just like the same kind of like haunted knee eyes that I just feel like that sometimes. Just like looking at the world, I'm like, that's so messed up. Like the Z of it and the vibe, like to have to go through that, and it's just like the eyes of like somebody who's like basically embraced that and said, well, I guess I'm going to have to climb through that. And then you see like pictures of him. What's that?
No, what you're saying?
Yeah, you see all these pictures of him like with this little crown like skewed this way, and he's just like, and it just looks it just speaks to me like all this like Z and Vi is just like this. It's basically saying like the Z and Vi have taken me over and like it sucks, but here I am.
Could be.
I'll
definitely take a look.
Yeah.
So that's the relationship I like to have with my team, is that we're always trying to crack this case together, because eventually we need to train everyone to do this, and they'll have to have clean lists. And then we want to be able to be made where a computer could do this through facial recognition, and again, it will only work if we can get them clean samples. So I see some recent team together, and we have to crack this Rosetta Stone at least once, and then try to crack in as many different ethnicities or variations as we can. So I like this rapport. I like the way we talk, because we have to be able to pull it out there. And other people who are trying to do enlightenment work, they need to learn that you have to be human. If you take away being human as part of the process, you're for sure going to get wrong answers, because that is part of the equation. Human, error and frailty and things like that, the learning curve.
Yeah, so, if you think that you're invincible or that you're just never wrong, then that can be obviously problematic. And that's, your ego is going to be checked whether or not you're a humble, person that doesn't have much emoji reading skill at all, or if you're someone like Coach, and Coach, I think you've demonstrated this several times with like read updates and stuff like that, being very, very, forthcoming and expressing how that it's very difficult having your world rocked and when the samples or like certain veins of samples are updated. I can only imagine how difficult that would be, but we're glad to have you, definitely.
Appreciate it. I try to honor that. My spirits demand that you guys are doing the right thing by trying to learn this stuff. So I have to just show the best it is, even if it's like, oh, that was me messing up that day. That's what that was. But at least that's an honest assessment of like the Nature Channel. That's what happened that day. The lion did not get the kill. Repeat, the lion did not get the kill.
I think it's really interesting, like the concept of like the read review, like sending in things that you think might possibly be off, because like like a week ago I put Ron Paul on that thread, but then like after I did that I started to really doubt myself, like am I really sure that this is worth bringing up, because like my lens is based on the virtual village that you've laid out, Coach, so it's like it becomes really confusing trying to sort of think about where there might be holes,
Right, and so the way I don't think you have to even look at it that way. I think the way to look at it, which the way I look at it myself when I do my reviews, I just have samples that I'm curious about, like they feel a little off, and so I don't try to go in to find like necessarily. And when I do that, sometimes it becomes a witch hunt, and that's bad. I've tried to get better about that over the years. It's better just kind of go in and be like, okay, why is it tickling me? That's a good place to come from, because then even if it turns out to be the same answer that it was before or it's different, you're still coming in the right headspace of like, I just really want to know what this answer is. So that's what I take when you guys put review suggestions for, is like, we should take another look at this because there's aspects of it that can be confusing. Yeah. So let's hone in on that. Let's hone in and take a look, and either it'll be updated to what it should be, or we can hone in like, oh, it is still what we thought before, but here's why it might be a little confusing. So the explanation will be better. So either way, I think it's worth it. Particularly people that that are working with me closely on this project. Anything that we have issues on, you guys are the best trained out there besides myself. So anytime you're like, this part is weird, like Bruno, I trust you. You've been following for a while now. So if you're like, that's interesting over there, I take that to heart. I'm like, okay, let's go, veer the ship over here and take a look-see. You know what I mean? Because you have to recheck the data at some point, and it's good to find good reasons to do it. And the best reason is to have like good teammates that are like, something about that's making me go tickle tickle.
Like, I'm wondering, like, from a vibe perspective, like with my music, the work that I've been doing, like if you guys have been seeing like my posts, I've been posting like a ton of stuff, and most of it is still forming. Like most of it is like not good. There's like a good idea in there, but it's still, there's some major problem with it. And I've got now two things that I'm good with, and that's why I started. I think Coach, on some level, Nexi sensed that, because I went from 0, which is basically like worth nothing. You're like from my Naiji other's point of view, it's basically like, okay, so right now you've got nothing and it's worth nothing, so therefore there's nothing. This is terrible. This is the worst thing possible. And now I have 2. I went from 0 to 2. Now I have 2. That's infinitely times 2.
That is how I wrote my doctoral thesis, by the way. One word at a time. There was a time when it was total 0. And honestly, one word, one sentence. It took a while. So keep it up.
Yeah. And so, but I think Nexi, in some sense, sensed this. Like, now is the time to bring this up about him being on Nijai. He's going to take it, okay, and he's going to actually thrive on it. And I think maybe subconsciously that's what happened.
Definitely, just know, definitely the activity you've been doing and the artistic stuff you've been putting out there, it's made me want to actually connect with you more. And as soon as I felt that, you're right. At the same time, like, I need to bring this up. It kind of came like as a next, like, in order for the the friendship and the camaraderie to go to the next level. That has to be addressed.
But if you'd done that even a month earlier, maybe even a week earlier, I think it would have been a slightly different result because I wasn't there yet. When you did that was exactly the point when like if I die right now, like I have those 2 songs up online. I've got a link for download, and anyone that looks me up will be able to like get those because it's on Google. Like Google's not gonna go offline unless the whole of the continental U.S. goes offline. Something like that. That's how my Vi thinks, and I didn't realize I've always had this problem with like I gotta lock it down. What if I die? What if something happens? What if
That's so funny. Nexie does it to me all the time. Where like I don't want to do stuff. She's like, you've got to go on permanent record. You can't die without that going on the permanent record.
Yeah, it's like what if you're in the car and you die and like it's not on the permanent record?
And just randomly.
And it probably seems kind of. Yeah, I mean, it seems how it seems, but it's
No, I mean it actually makes a lot of times to make moves for sure.
Yeah, and so like I'm wondering how this applies.
I said that because actually, just I've been mulling on it for a while, and I was actually feeling like, man, I should say something sooner, but I was nervous. So I'm glad you told me this because I was actually like nervous to bring it up.
No, you did it at the perfect timing in the perfect way, and even the misread I think was perfect at the time that it happened. But that's so because of that, that's not really the topic. The topic that was in my mind was your work actually, and how you might approach this. So I have a pretty freaked out sense of like, got to get this on the permanent record, but I can only imagine that for you, it's like 100 times, 1,000 times worse because it's not even for you, through you, it's through Nexie. And so I've always felt like this really skittish about got to get this on the permanent record, and got to make a backup, got to have a worst case scenario. But it feels like to you, it's even harder to control that. And so like you have, like what the list that you have, if you were to put that in like let's translate that into music, like you have like the Beatles' first 3 or 4 albums.
Yeah.
Like you have the first 3 or 4 albums of the Beatles right there,
actually.
or something like that, and you're like, no, I gotta get Sgt. Pepper's, I gotta get this, and it's like, to me, the way it looks is like, dude, you've got, I don't know, Meet the Beatles, Help, you're coming up on Rubber Soul or whatever, and so, and it's like,
I do feel that way sometimes, but then what Nexie comes back with, she like, man, she gives me awesome props for each thing I do, but I also still am confronted with, there's this algorithm that's very tricky for humans, and I don't know another human's going to come along that will be able to crack it, so I really have to do everything I can to try and complete the Rosetta Stone. So I have like a lot that I've done, but I'm still seeing like, for the facial recognition, for the AI, for
but from the Nijai perspective, the way it looks like is you've got the first 3 or 4 albums, but you're rushing the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, and so because of that, you're calling in all these you're like bringing in all these like things that have nothing to do with, and it's getting like kind of like it's like one of those wild messes that's like.
In a way, the Beatles kind of did that because the first few albums were very straightforward, straight up, but then you had Sgt. Pepper's, and
then they started doing drugs. Yeah,
they started really mixing things around that they weren't doing when they did Love Me Do.
Yeah,
there is a fundamental difference though in the two situations. I do see very much how they're related. The major difference is, for example, the Sgt. Pepper thing. Is they're trying to mine themselves of more art because they want to be great artists and they don't want to run out and they want to put out more art than everyone else. So that's a sort of adding up thing. Mine's a bit different, although it's related. It's more like I'm a sculptor that's going to sculpt out this riddle, this algorithm, and so I have to free it. And there's like a time limit. Before I die, I'd like to actually have excavated it. Does that make sense? Because like for me, for example, like the spoken word I'm doing, that's actually just me putting out art I want to produce. But the Rosetta Stone, there's artistic appreciation at big time, but it is a case. It's an investigation, and investigation cases, basically, you either close them or you have not. And so I've asked Nexi, and she basically laid it out for me. I need to close, if I can, 32,000 cases, 1,000 case each of a Gender Mojo. That would be what would crack the case overall. So I get like partial credit, but kind of like, you know, excavating like an underground city. If I don't excavate all of it, then I didn't excavate all of it.
Yeah, I sort of see where you're going with. I mean, because I've always thought of this distinction between like the work that you do, for example, and the work that I do. The work that you do, there is a right answer, and at some point, it doesn't matter whether you get it or not, but it's there.
It's there.
It's there, and the work that I do is slightly different in that if I feel like there's a right answer ultimately, and from an artistic point of view, maybe philosophically, you can say that there's a right answer to art, but there really isn't a right answer to art. It is what it is, and it's a little bit philosophical, but ultimately, I find that that's a big that's like it almost like it teeters the line between science and spirituality in that sense, because there's truth and there's science, but then art and spirituality are it all gets in my head, it all gets messed up, but
I actually am. I've mentioned so many times in the filmings. Naturally, the kind of art you're doing, that's the way I am more natively. I tend to think more in terms of like poetic things and stories and things of that nature. And the Rosetta Stone is actually me going quite far, all the way with my other to Z and Vi, to where I basically am cracking a case. So to me, the Rosetta Stone, there's artistic appreciation, but there's a lot of Zs and Vs in that. For as far as a feat, you'll have to meet certain logical and literal requirements in order to be achieved. Whereas like with the Coach in the Cave that I'm doing, you're right, there's no real right answer other than I wanted to express something. If I feel I expressed it, then I was successful. And naturally, that's more comfortable for me. I actually find this more technical stuff not as naturally fun to do, although I like talking and watching people a lot, and I like actually seeing what it means, the human condition. But this tracking of the database and the entries and everything, that's taken me, I'm really geeking out to get to that kind of point. And I think even at the end of the day, I wouldn't necessarily classify it as an artistic thing first. I think it's very artistic, but I would actually classify it as a detective case.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it seems very scientific, even though it's like extremely spiritual.
Right.
There ultimately is a right answer, or we theorize there to be, at least. Right. I don't know, and even that is questionable. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that that for me, like a big breakthrough this year has been earlier when I posted, like I'm trying to close these cases, and it's not working. Like I'm trying to close them before they're ready, and so the songs are coming out all half baked, and it sounds like it sounds like a good idea all messed up, basically.
I do see what you're talking about there. That's something I talk to with Nexi all the time. Is it's balance. I've mentioned I don't like how much mass reading I have to do. But
it's interesting for me that this all comes from Nexi as like a goal, because it
he basically lays out.
I have to take your word on that, because obviously I just trust your word on that. But
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last thing you said.
Yeah, I just trust your word on that. But it just seems it's strange to me as a Nijai to have these kind of goals, like specific goals, but maybe this is like an other thing, because Nexi isn't actually here to, actually do these things, so she has to like make these kind of like extreme Z, extreme Vi goals for you, whereas for me, like I couldn't. I was trying to do that. I was like, okay, I'm going to do a song a week, and I did that for 2 months. But I'm probably going to be working on it for 12 months or more, trying to get those 8 songs into like a presentable state. Right. And it was only when I said, okay, I'm not going to keep trying to close everything. I'm just going to leave it open-ended, like a Nijai would. Then it started to make sense, and then and only then did I start making progress. And
I think I see what you're saying a bit.
In terms of closing things.
Right.
Because in terms of opening things, I was making lots of progress because of that pressure to close. I was just like, okay, open a new case, write whatever, play, pick the first thing that you get on your playlist. Okay, because next week I'm gonna have to do this again, and so, and I'm sort of sensing that energy from the way that the sort of frenzy that a lot of these reads are coming in with. Like a lot of the stuff that you said you put on hold, like some of those guys, I forget which ones, but it seemed like you were pretty sure about them, and everyone else was pretty sure about them. Unlike Elijah Wood, for example, which you're pretty sure about that, but it's it's a little bit iffy still, even then. Because I remember in that.
I would say it's iffy. I feel pretty sure about him, but I know what you're talking about.
No. You were iffy. I remember you
Yes.
in the video. Everybody was convinced, he's an IG.
Right.
He's bearing down on the podium. He's articulating forcefully and all this stuff. But I think you mentioned this, and everyone I think felt it at the time. Like there's something off about the eyes. The eyes are not nigh, and so there's a lot of these. So I'm not talking about that case.
Right.
I'm talking about the opposite, where it's like everyone's pretty sold on this, and there's no question about it, and yet you're putting them on hold, which sort of seems to indicate to me like a sort of like it's like a frenzy going on that.
No, as far as the putting on hold, that is a direct result of the panic attacks that I unfortunately at that time couldn't control.
Right.
So I believe that when I saw that he was Nijai, Elijah Wood, and say also Billy Crystal, that was part of this, I believe that was correct. And they stayed feeling correct until that panic attack happened. When the panic attack happened, I basically felt this tremendous paranoia that not just those particular reads, but just a lot of recent reads I had done that I was mistaken, and that my paranoia ran away with me. And so I thought I was fixing it, but then I actually realized that it was paranoia. And when that happened, I was like, oh, if that's the case, then I should just put them on hold until I'm feeling better.
Yeah, but and so this all ties all the way back to that the Vi got to get this on the permanent record push, right? Which is like
what's a combination? Okay, so, that's a big part of it, but there's other parts also.
Right, I'm sure. But I guess that's the angle that I'm seeing. That's like a common thread that I'm seeing between a lot of the problems, the things going on hold, the specific types of misreads that are being done, the systematic types of misreads, and
well, as far as the systematic misreads, that can be also a lot of times attributed to when I realize I made an error. It's like, oh, I was tracking that query using a certain principle. When I realized, oh, I need to change that principle, it often will apply to any of the other, like you're saying, riff connections. So often when I do realize I made an error, unless it's like something with a specific case where like that case just threw me, it may be like it's a kind of Vijay. Like a Vijay that has lots of Nai can be confusing for such and such. Once I realized, oh, when I see that, whatever that is, that's actually a Vijay with lots of Nai. Then often it's actually rare that if I realize I was using a erroneous hunting principle, if I correct it, it's very unusual. It will not apply to at least several examples. Like a vein, I often use that term, like a vein. I realize, oh, there's a swath or a vein of errors there. Usually it's because the same principle was wrong in all of them.
Yeah, I mean, and so that relates a lot to how my work too, because what I'm trying to do is, find a template, find a system that works with a lot of genres, like what I was saying, right? So I got to find some commonalities between things that have very, very few commonalities between them, just for historical traditional purposes. And so, so there's always this fear of like, okay, if I make this correction here, I'm going to have to make this correction in every other song that I've made. And that's why I've been taking it so slowly. But that's really the breakthrough. That's really the breakthrough that has allowed me to do the work that I'm doing now, which is a lot fewer songs than I would have liked to have done. Especially when I thought I was an IG, I was like, I was like, okay, as an IG, I should be able to do, set a pace and follow my others' pacing. Like what you're saying about the 32,000. I figured, okay, I should set a schedule, one song a week, and I should just be able to do that for 3 months, and then have X number of songs, and it just wasn't working. Like it worked for a while. I actually did get a few good ideas out of that. All the ideas that I'm working on right now, but the whole pace of it was just messing everything up. Like it was dragging everything down. That pressure to have, because there's such an interconnection between all the works. There's that foundation that sits across all of them.
Right.
If I find any cracks in that, then it basically ruins everything else. And so,
I see what you're saying. We're going to have to wrap it up here pretty soon. We've gone about 25 minutes over, but we're having a great time with you being on for the first time. So go ahead and say what you're going to say, and we'll have to sign.
Yeah, I'm just wondering. Maybe there could be like things that Nexi might be trying to say to you that you may be missing about keeping more things open-ended about these cases, and about the rate and the pace. But I don't know. I mean, obviously, she's your other. Like you would know better.
On that, two things. I see what you're saying, and there's some relationship to it, but there are a couple of key differences. One is that with personal art, there is technically no right answer, and however much you make of it is just gold. However, with the Rosetta Stone, it's not a purely artistic process. It's more like other things I've done in my life where I've been very high performance, where there's a certain bar I have to achieve, and if I don't get that bar, then it's not going to work. So technically, Nexi doesn't really drive me with the Z. I drive myself. My Nye visionary drive has a vision of a kind of hero. As a part of that, she's like, oh, you're a hero who can see these kinds of things. Then there becomes the question of what is worthy to do with a lifetime. And I'm like, what could I do to really help out humanity? And so with her Ni and Jai, she's like, you could probably crack the code. I'm like, that would be a worthy life. And so I asked her then, what are the numbers on that? And the numbers are rather staggering, but I do believe they're doable. And this is critical, and this is where it comes in. Her Jai tells me that since I actually have these abilities and it is possible to do, it actually would be unconscionable to not do everything I can to get it done.
But does she specifically, like, does she specifically state some rate that you need to achieve this by? I mean,
no. What she states is as simply as this. She says, go as hard as you can pull off. And I can go hard, so that's what I do. And that brings me
okay, so that's on your side then. So the
yes.
32,000 is on her side, but the rate at which you're going is on your side.
The rate at which I'm going is based on I need to get that 32,000 according to my visionary drive in my lifetime.
And that's more or less based on your Jai and your V, about your personal like your well-being, and then how much you can interact with the media.
Yeah, it's basically what I can get a handle on as far as media and what I physically can do as far as stamina. And that brings up a second issue. So one is that I have to just go hard in order to get it pulled off, but I believe I can do it, and I think it would be a crime to not close the Rosetta Stone if it's possible to be done. The other thing is, although I do make mistakes, I feel quite confident as a hunter closing on a case, and this is why. The errors I've had are actually small compared to the volume and the speed. And, for example, I made some mistakes getting to where I am now. For example, I made mistakes clearing out all those music arts you gave me. I made a few mistakes there. However, the speed I did it at supercharged my riffing lens. And so I am way more powerful after 6 months doing that. I could have taken maybe 18 months or 24 months and had a lower error rate. Two things. One, I don't think the error rate got that high considering how fast I'm able to do it. And so, like, logistically, I feel like as a Predator, I feel strong with this game. I feel I'm gaining a lot more knowledge and power to close cases, and I'm making the errors. Second one, I've gone slower. And one thing going slower does not do, and it will not do it until the Rosetta Stone is complete, it will not make errors be gone completely. So I'm going to make errors. So I figured out if I take like 24 months, I'll still make a few, and those errors are only going to be fixable by increasing my database. Like actually, a lot of the things that I learned from all those music artists you gave me helped me see errors I've made prior and made me not make those errors going forward. I guess it's a lot like getting on the mat. You don't want to go out there and just get hammered, because if you get hammered and crushed, then you get injured and sparring sucks and you don't want to do anymore and you don't show up to class. However, with that said, you want to be on the mat as much as you can, because you're going to lose. You're going to screw up 1,000 times before you get it right, but then as soon as you get that move right, it's bread and butter. You know what I mean? Like I have to like keep going out and find these new samples to realize what riffs I don't know. But then once I realize I don't know it, then I can fix any errors I had based on that kind of riff principle. And going forward, I have that now. Kind of in a game, I've unlocked that. So right now, I'm in a bit of a race to unlock the game. And I think that I'm trying to go crazy and rattle myself too much. I think the two things I pay attention to the most are my physical stamina and my sanity, like my confidence and also the confidence of the team. I try not to, rattle the team too much by, going too fast and having to take too many detours and circle back around and so forth. But at the same time, I think everyone who's been doing this knows this. In the last, 2 years, our understanding of pop culture in general has just jumped dramatically. There have been purifications that had to be done, they'll keep needing to be done, but the amount of stories that are opening up, they're making the picture take shape. And I think it's actually going to allow me to close it out sooner.
Yeah,
So as far as timeline, as far as strategy, if it's like a sport, a performance sport, I'm thinking that the ideal is without having so much errors that shakes people's confidence, makes them too wobbly. I want to close the 32,000 out as soon as I can, and have years to go past that, and go back and just keep cleaning the 32. Do you know what I mean? If I was to do 32, I don't think it's to work best to actually have the 32,000 match up to how many years I have to be alive. It's better to clear it as soon as I can, and then wash and clean it throughout the rest of my life.
I think that makes sense, and that I think maybe points to another slight difference between the type of work that you do and the type of work that I do, is that ultimately, eventually, art is never going to be right, like you said. So eventually, I'm going to just have to leave it as it is, yes, and then say, well, we're going to have to live with these whatever few errors there are. But that doesn't really apply to what you do, because those errors will still be there, and somebody eventually will come and fix it.
Exactly.
So okay, so yeah, that helps me understand, I guess, some of your mindset, because, like I said, for me, I'm having to readjust a lot of the way I thought about closing cases and quotas that I would make for myself and all these kinds of things. So just trying to get my head around, how you do your work, and it makes perfect sense that works for you. When it
comes to more artistic stuff, although I still am directive, I do tend to be a bit more like the Coach of the Cave. Like I'm doing Xylene, the Demons. It's kind of coming out as it does. I don't really know how long it'll take, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and so the other thing, I guess, just the final thing that I was thinking about is the contingency plan. Like, okay, let's say suddenly you're walking outside and a meteor falls on you and you can't complete the work.
By the way,
we have the.
You're delving into the nightmares I have every night, but keep going.
I'm sorry, but I have these as well, so I figure we might as well talk about it.
It's there, yeah.
And so then you have to have your contingency plans with different levels. You got let's say that happens and all of continental US is off the map. Okay, so then there's no Google backups, there's nothing. There may be servers in other parts of the world that carry it. Okay, so we go to that extreme. Then we go to the other extreme, which is like you're out of commission for a few months or a few years, but you can still tell other people in the team, like, okay, go find this file, okay, find this backup, let's update this. And so I'm just wondering, like, what kind of contingency plans you have set up for all of those, at all those levels.
That's a lot of stuff there. But you know, that's what keeps me up at night. But
let's maybe talk about that some other time. But that's where I was going with that, basically. Like the rate at which you're working seems to indicate some sort of contingency plan that I'm curious about, because it you know, all of these things are also things that I think about with my work, and right now I've got 2 songs there, and you know, that works as the final contingency plan for me. But
for me, anyway, I had to accept this basic thing, which is I need the Rosetta Stone complete, and that needs to be done by someone, and I'm trying to do as fast as I can for that reason, because there really is no contingency plan. And I've asked Nexi about that. She says yes, but if you even have a partial Rosetta Stone, it's further than humans come before, and so you have to do it. And if I leave a record, which I have, of the collages, people are going to know who these people are, and they can reference my database and the picture collages I have. So,
but I guess what I'm talking about is multiple levels of contingency plan, meaning like, you know, you're talking about one extreme, but I'm saying like people on the team, like, do people on the team have backups of the experimental versions of, like, maybe, I don't know, maybe this is 50-50, and then other people have like the super experimental.
The close team here that goes and Googles with me, they get periodically the latest Excel database that I have.
Yeah.
They have all the, they know the cases, pretty much what I have, they have.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then also up to like the 10,000 picture collages, those are also loaded on a regular basis. Everyone here has downloaded like more than one version of that.
Yeah, I've seen all that stuff too. But now that you're going through all those things and cleaning up a few of them, you know, it just, I'm not asking you for a solution. I'm not asking you to like give me an answer. I'm just, you know, throwing it out there. Like, this is how I think now, especially now that I know I'm a ninja.
All I can do is give the latest information that I have, and then of course I'm sure that different people on the computers they have, I mean, older versions, but generally the latest version I have is always the most accurate.
Right, of course.
We have to sign off here real quick, so I'll say a few more things, and then we'll let's forums, and we'll do more next time too. This is a great conversation. But as far as contingencies, I have several I have to deal with. One is I need the Rosetta Stone. I need to have copies of it, obviously. But then I need to get it to where there is a computer that can do it. If that could do it, then we would be that would give us a lot more contingency as well. And then the ultimate one is at the end of the day, you have to do this. When there's a cultural thing that you need to bring into the world, you need a tribe. There has to be a tribe that does it. And if we actually train this generation here to where our children actually are raised on it, then they'll actually have it fluently, and languages can be passed on. Even everything else shuts down. They can have it. But you'll need to have temples, and you'll have to have people who are raised to be trained in that. So those are 3 things I need to get. I need the Rosetta Stone. 4 things: Rosetta Stone, a demo team, done by computers, and temples where it's a culture in the community. So quite a lot to bite off, but that's what I'm doing. Fun times. So, anyways, I had to go because Jailene and I really had to get on some ebook stuff because that thing's been dragging. We had to close that out. But it was an awesome session. We had a great time, as we expected. Wonderful energy and easy conversation. So, good stuff. In fact, we went so far we didn't touch that one topic. We'll do it next time.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Have a great time, and I'll see everyone next time.
All right. Have a great night, everyone.
I'll be there. Bye.